Bible prayers. Introduction. What is prayer? Prayer is a means of communication with God, a way to express our thoughts, needs, gratitude, and adoration. It involves both speaking to God and listening for His response. Engaging God in prayer. Approach God with a humble and sincere heart, acknowledging His power and sovereignty. Pray with faith, believing that God hears and answers prayers according to His will. Consistency in prayer. Regular and consistent prayer helps to build a deeper relationship with God. It's not just about asking for things, but also about growing closer to Him. Praying according to God's will. Align your prayers with God's will and His Word. When we pray according to His will, we can be confident that He hears us. Abraham's intercession. Genesis 20 verses 17 to 18. So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Then they bore children, for the Lord had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Explanation. Abraham interceded for Abimelech after a misunderstanding that resulted in Abimelech taking Sarah, Abraham's wife, into his household. God had closed the wombs of all the women in Abimelech's household as a consequence. When Abraham prayed, God listened and healed Abimelech's household, allowing them to bear children again. This demonstrates the power of intercessory prayer and God's willingness to heal and restore. Priestly blessing. Numbers 6:24-27. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. So they shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Explanation. This is a priestly blessing given to Moses to speak over the children of Israel. It is a prayer asking for God's protection, favor, grace, and peace. By invoking God's name, the Israelites were assured of His presence and blessings. This passage underscores the importance of blessing others and seeking God's favor for them. Moses' intercession for the people. Numbers 11:1. Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, for the Lord heard it and His anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them, and consumed some in the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. Explanation. The Israelites complained against God, which angered Him and resulted in a consuming fire at the outskirts of the camp. People cried out to Moses for help, and Moses interceded on their behalf. God responded to Moses' prayer and quenched the fire. This highlights the importance of interceding for others and God's readiness to respond to sincere prayers. Samuel's intercession for Israel. 1 Samuel 7 verse 9. And Samuel took a suckling lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. Then Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. Explanation. Samuel prayed on behalf of Israel during a time of conflict with the Philistines. He offered a burnt offering and cried out to the Lord for help. God answered Samuel's prayer, delivering Israel from their enemies. This shows the power of sacrificial prayer and God's faithfulness in delivering His people. King's plea for healing. 1 Kings 13 verse 6. Then the king answered and said to the man of God, "Please entreat the favor of the Lord your God and pray for me that my hand may be restored to me." So the man of God entreated the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him and became as before. Explanation. King Jeroboam's hand was paralyzed as a consequence of his disobedience to God. He pleaded with the man of God to pray for his healing. The man of God prayed, and God restored the king's hand. This demonstrates God's mercy and His willingness to heal those who turn to Him. Elijah's prayer for the widow's son. 1 Kings 17 verses 20-24. Then he cried out to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, have you also brought tragedy on the widow with whom I lodged by killing her son?" And he stretched himself out on the child 3 times and cried out to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, I pray, let this child's soul come back to him." Then the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came back to him, and he revived. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house, and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son lives." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now by this I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is the truth." Explanation: Elijah prayed fervently for the widow's son who had died. He cried out to God and performed a symbolic act of stretching himself over the child 3 times. God heard Elijah's prayer and revived the child. This miracle strengthened the widow's faith and confirmed Elijah as a true prophet of God. Jabez's prayer for blessing. 1 Chronicles 4 verse 10 and KJV. Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, and that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain." So God granted him what he requested. Explanation: Jabez prayed for God's blessings, asking for prosperity, protection, and that he might not cause harm. His prayer was sincere and heartfelt, seeking God's favor and guidance. God granted his request, demonstrating his willingness to bless those who earnestly seek him. This prayer highlights the importance of seeking God's help and protection in our lives. God's response to Job. Job 38 verse 1 and KJV. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said. Explanation: Job had been questioning God and lamenting his suffering. God finally answered him out of a whirlwind, revealing his power and majesty. God's response was not just to address Job's complaints, but to remind him of the vastness and mystery of his creation. This encounter helped Job gain a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and his own place in the world. Conclusion: understanding the power of prayer and how God responds can deepen our faith and trust in Him. By looking at these biblical examples, we see that God hears and answers prayers in various situations, whether it's intercession for others, seeking blessings, or crying out in distress. Our identity in God is paramount. It grounds us in His truth and love. As we engage in prayer, let us remember that God calls us righteous, loved, and accepted, and He is always willing to listen and respond to His children.